Morning. Welcome to wrap up day here. Only remaining agenda item is to, well, there was management supporting information, but there was nothing there. So right on to going over the report and final adoption. So the usual approach here, we'll just put a few paragraphs on the screen, let people read them and consider them. If there's nothing to add, no comment, that's fine. To say anything, I'll just move on. Just raise any issues. Okay, so we'll start. We'll start here at section 3.3, so paragraph 7 and 8. Paragraph 8, I believe we've written before. That's what it's recalling. So I'm not sure what we were agreeing to. That we consider and advise on the potential implications of climate change. But maybe what we could do, what I would agree to do, is maybe make the agenda item of that from one of our meetings, just to kind of like this meeting here seemed to have an AI agenda item that we spent, was it yesterday, an hour and a half or so talking about. You could have one, climate change, and just get everyone's experience and understanding of what might be coming from Pacific Halibut with respect to climate change.
So would you like to have that for the next meeting or the June meeting?
That's how much we have on the agenda for September. And who's going to be there, we're not sure really. So maybe next June for the research. Since that's probably what it'll be anyway, the research topic. So let's do that.
Maybe just add a bit of a sentence there at the end then. It's to be added. It's an agenda item to SRB028, June 2026. That'll help as well. We have the new
Requested, recommended.
Requested.
And meanwhile, I guess you're not going to make a huge progress on developing a research plan for climate change in the next 2 months. So maybe that discussion will help that part of the research plan. Too late. Okay. Paragraphs 9 and 10.
Yeah, I just thought the questions there are not going to be a discussion.
Yeah, we did talk a lot about these. Yeah, we didn't get specifically on the implications. We didn't look specifically at that, but
Probably a lot of discussion.
we did talk about it a lot. Yeah. So I meant to mention this shrimp assessment that we did last year. There was a whole really detailed length composition and CPUE from 2 big fisheries. And then there was the survey information. And so I was advising some work on our prawn fishery in BC that only uses fishery dependent information, but it's all it's a lot of detailed length composition, weekly fishery CPUE and catch and all that. And so I wanted to say, like, what could happen if you were using just the fishery? So we took the shrimp model and turned off the fishery, turned off the survey, research survey. And it wasn't too bad. It still looked like a stock assessment, except the recruitment, the real, the full assessment recruitment's doing this, and the fisheries one is going that way. And the SSB was off by a factor of 3 for one of the stocks. One of the stocks was actually very close to the other. So that's kind of we just wanted to show what are the consequences of using fishery. Even we were also using time bearing catchability in the fishery and all that. Well, covering a lot of bases here, but still.
If there's no information to argue with it, then it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not going to say it's hyperstable or
Yeah.
not.
So in this case, you're somewhere in between those two things, probably closer to this would say. Down a bit. Okay, 11 to 13.
These were just the placeholders for a second. Under program.
In 13, were we expecting to see this draft over the summer before 27 or at? I guess it would be a month before the meeting.
Yeah, so it just for the rules, you would get it formally 30 days prior, but we would like to get it to you before then, just so you can start to maybe switch feedback. If you're
So
about.
we'll just. Very nice. Let's scroll up. Let's consider this together. 14 to 16.
Maybe 15 and 16 are versions of what I said when we were talking before. I just wanted to check and make sure that you're in agreement with those.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
constrain you.
yeah, for sure. We're certainly, the next steps are, like packaging up, publications.
Yeah, and we're not saying drop it like a hot potato,
Yeah,
Wrap-
no, for
wrap it up
sure.
and do the publication.
Dropping it
sure.
for good reasons, not for bad
Right,
reasons.
right. I mean, I guess, not finding something right doesn't prove that it exists. So like you open yourself up to like a different line of scrutiny, right? So
Always harder to publish those
Right.
papers.
So just trying to start, making steps in that direction. But I think it certainly should be published. So, and it's doable. Thank you. So.
– 17 to 19.
Did 18 change? I thought yesterday it said the next full assessment. I just read that wrong. Basically, the question, when to plan for incorporating the fecundity data.
Oh yeah, I shouldn't say. I think that's future. Maybe your co-pilot edited that for you. Until the next full assessment.
Yeah, which I think makes a lot of sense because we're going to be collecting data this year and next year. I think Colin's got lots of just sample processing and more.
The processing of those samples is a lot more cumbersome than histology. It's going to take time.
Tempering people's expectations so that, yeah, there's gonna be interest, like, oh, wow, you got the maturity done. When's the fecundity? And it's, well, we need to get it right before we introduce it into this process. So I think that's gonna be really helpful to give people a heads up that we're planning for this next full assessment.
I think that's what we meant.
Yeah.
And I've heard it a few times now over the last couple of years. Industry and mostly from industry is, it seems like they just get comfortable with something and something changes in the stock assessment that changes everything. And they get fatigued. So
They
do it at every full assessment. Okay, I can take that, but every year kind of.
Even the change in maturity this year is gonna, we're gonna talk about it a lot because it's gonna elevate the spawning biomass a little bit and it's gonna elevate the status a little bit. And people's perception right now is that the stock's at a low. So explaining that is always a challenge. Nothing's changed on the water. It's our understanding that's changed. And that's, honestly, that's going to be a full plate of explaining for me this year.
Yeah.
Even without any further change. So this will be helpful just to say, we recognize this stuff is hard to deal with. I mean, there was quite a bit of discussion at the MSAB about changing the stock assessment this year. Right, Alan?
Yeah, and they're certainly fatigued by it. It's the number one topic they're talking about.
They should go to ICES.
I know.
Nothing ever changes.
Never changes.
Yeah, when the assessment's dead wrong.
There is an alternative.
On 19, did you want to add any support for the preliminary geostatistical modeling that's going on? That's how we're,
We talk about it.
Comes up later.
oh, okay, sorry.
Down below.
Forgot it was down.
Yeah, so right there.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it's in regard to 19, we do have a pretty, now that we have calibrated visual maturity ogives dating back to 2002, we do have environmental data back to 2009. So there is a pretty good time series there that could be used potentially to look at maturity changes and see if environmental factors are causing some.
And you've got a lot of other environmental data back well before 2009 as well. Don't just be stuck.
No, I know. Yeah.
Casts.
Yeah.
The environmental data out there.
Okay, 20 and 21.
For adding 21.
Yeah, I want, in 21, we just said the final model. I know you had 6 bullets there. The final model is probably fine, right?
Yeah, that's great. It was intended just to show the chain of development.
Yeah, it'd be-
22.
Three. Round it. 25. I have to put that in there. Converting to, oh no, it is there. It is there. Sorry. 26.
It's good except for the
I know, huh? Well, I've been grilled on this. I hate it. I don't like doing that, but apparently it's the American Fisheries Society standard
Is that
now
right?
is to capitalize
Second?
Oh, no.
proper name or whatever it is. Oh, that. I thought you were talking about the capital H. I've been noticing every time halibut is, when that you wrote it has lowercase h, and when I write it, it has an uppercase. Stacks of American Fisheries Society, you're probably all members of the damn thing. Okay, so we can also go with this lowercase h, but that, yeah, the double L's, sorry. It's an international. We're embracing diversity here.
As Mark once said, I think I gave a presentation where I mixed American. He said, this is a real international document.
That's great. Yeah, we, in that original bullet that we wrote, we didn't say, well, there's a bunch of meetings in between that we could probably. Moving on to the MSE work, 27 to 29.
I think 27 should just be modified slightly to reflect the actual document. We didn't present the MSC program, but I think in the document it states an update of the IPHC management strategy evaluation and the harbor strategy policy. So, and the harbor strategy policy. I agree with 30. I'm just wondering if you have any. Well, I don't think it needs to be in the report. Discussion for this or ping you and just make sure we're on the right track. I have a few ideas, but
You want it to go. The Canadian one actually is potentially useful there. Lowest level from which the stock is previously recovered.
yeah, so I was thinking about that. And if we use that definition, we could be overfished now. Because we're at potentially the lowest level. Don't know that the stock's recovered from this point. Otherwise, we would probably use something in the 70s, which is very uncertain. But we have the potential of being overfished now when fishing effect is not. I mean, isn't that big?
So this might get, originally when I was revising this, I was thinking about the term depleted.
Mhm.
Because according to your time varying B0,
Yeah.
you're probably not,
Right.
the growth is down.
Yeah.
So it's not technically overfished. It's not a fishing issue. But it is a depletion issue.
Right.
So
How's that?
Yeah, I do like that. I'm just wondering if maybe I should do some simulations where we bring in some depensation and as a precautionary measure, and we do some simulations and find a point where it might be a level that is where the stock may not recover with some probability. And so I actually more search for some point and relate that to a reference point or something like that. But I'm just, I have some ideas. I'm just wondering if we might have a little bit of freedom to do this and bring back some ideas at the next SRB.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure a simulation is going to solve it because the idea is that you're at biomass levels, and that's why I worded it this way. You're at biomass levels you haven't been to before. So the possibilities are much broader for what might happen. It's not, the different mechanisms of depensation may be several ways that it plays out.
Right.
So I agree. Eventually you would want to simulate them, but at this stage, you might be better off just kind of thinking about or jumping into writing models and stuff, maybe to take a step back and have a broader internal discussion or whatever about all the different ways that the Lee effects could happen, or other, maybe you just get a run of 10 years of bad recruitment.
Right.
Who knows why?
Okay.
There's lots of things that could happen. Could get a bad PDO.
What I had understood Alan to be saying was fitting compensatory models and looking at the range of possible biomasses where compensation might be occurring based on.
Or where recovery might be really have a low probability. Find, okay, if depensation is, the parameter's like 3, it's pretty high depensation, but a level of depensation. That if the biomass is half of what we observe now or in 2023, would not recover with the greatest 5% chance, or just trying to figure out a level, like, because we looked at depensation in the past and we found that we haven't been at low enough level that the range of depensation that was likely for Pacific halibut didn't seem to have a concerning effect. So we put that on pause and says, if we get to lower levels, let's redo this analysis. So I'm wondering, maybe we just sort of flip it around. We say, what level of depensation is necessary to have a concern at the levels we're at now, and what are more likely ones? So what trying to hone in on an absolute level. I completely agree with that. I like the concept of depleted, but just concern picking a level where we've observed, if we haven't observed potentially lower levels that are still able to recover.
But it's almost unknowable.
It is, yeah.
That's the whole idea.
And that's my point here is like, well, do you have any recommendation on how I can find a value that is unknowable?
No, I don't. Except to record, just.
Yeah.
It's a thought experiment now.
Yeah.
And I think the probabilistic framework that is the way to go. We're sure with X% certainty that we're not going to be in that level.
Right.
You don't know where it is, but you know where it is not, in terms of the upper range, and become increasingly uncertain whether it's possible down there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily go to the component Lee effects, but just simply vary the depensation parameter in the structural model. Look at the plausible range where it might be, and then try to identify what is the critical level below which recovery is seriously slower.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You might look at the models that Phil Neubauer developed. They're Bayesian hazard rate models for sensory data, because you have sensory data, you don't know whether we're going to recover from the current situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fundamentally, you don't know until you've gone there. Right? And so maybe, I don't know if it's worth noting here that we are currently at or near as low as we've been. So that would suggest a reference point somewhere around where we are, which is what we've been saying since 2023. We got to this recent low.
Yeah. But if we define where we currently are as a fished or depleted level, after which a rebuilding plan needs to be made, that could have some serious consequences to the fishery and the perception of the halibut stock.
It's true, but you're also at a level you've never seen before, and it's the lowest on record, which kind of warrants maybe doing that. Like
Yeah.
maybe you're all, rather than just write a bunch of words, like it's got to have teeth.
Yeah.
If you're going to bother doing it, and I don't see any evidence that I don't know why you shouldn't be doing it.
The commission has de facto been behaving like, or been implementing a rebuilding plan, just not formally.
Well, not a very aggressive one.
Yes.
Yeah, and then that,
But when the shape of the stock recruitment curve is coming from convex to concave, that's already the early warning.
I know you did some work on that last time and I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So,
But
The
the
other thing I was-
credibility intervals still included values below 1.
Yeah. And so I think what might be useful is to stretch that a little bit
Yeah,
and really push the model with depensation and see what is necessary and what levels are we talking about?
so we did a bunch of work on Southern Gulf cod. And maybe, I'm not sure it really applies to halibut, but there, it's not, recruitment's not the problem. There it's natural mortality. It's predation. That's really affected that stock, which was my point, that there may be other delay effects that are affecting productivity that are not stock recruitment. Some others might maturity, other things might play all through the stock recruit relationship.
but eventually, if adult fish are predating, then that will affect spawns by these.
Right. Which, if it doesn't affect the recruits per spawner, doesn't stock recruit relationship. It affects spawners,
Yeah,
their survival rate to spawning.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that you weren't expecting something to come back, but this might take a little bit of thought. A little bit of work, but we'll.
Yeah, it
go again
is.
and have a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Figure out a plan forward.
Yeah. And I guess as soon as you come up with an answer, you may have a new job to be working on, which is a rebuilding plan, like a formal one.
That would be.
You just don't want to, I mean, that's our role is to be like,
Yes.
we don't really care what position the commission ends up in.
Yeah.
It's being objective about where you are relative to these kinds of things.
We've been laying this exact risk out to the commission for several years now.
Yeah.
As we're approaching, we're at the lowest biomass we've observed, there's risk associated with it because it's uncharted territory.
Yeah.
We literally for the last 3 cycles been explaining that to people. And as Alan mentioned, the commission's been taking that into consideration. The challenge is just, invoking a reference point and a whole management paradigm based on sort of theoretical, non-data grounded theoretical considerations is going to be a challenge. So it's something we want to make sure we have as clear a rationale for as possible.
And depending on what your rebuilding plan, because this, you have a limited ability to affect what this stock does, except to fish less. So a rebuilding plan could be as simple as not necessarily having to go and model processes you don't understand. Use the ones you know right now and start looking forward. Say, okay, next year, here's the projected available production. How much are you going to give to rebuilding?
Yeah.
And that may be a rebuilding plan. It's a proportion of production that's donated to rebuilding.
Mhm.
And, even if
Do you think that's better than a rebuilding timeline?
yes, I don't think you can put a time in on rebuilding.
Yeah, especially when it's dependent on the conditions of the stock, size and group But I do like that. In the decision table, we currently have a column that is 3-year surplus production. So basically keeping the spawning biomass the same over a 3-year period. So we can actually figure that out.
So should we maybe have something in here? Maybe noting that the current state of the stock is approaching biomass levels, maybe preceding this.
A new paragraph, you're saying?
Well, before you jump in and do it, I just want to know, is it something to, you guys have been, everybody's aware of this. Let's just call it up.
This decision this year actually reflected very strong this discussion. They have 43, we give them better than 50%, 58% chance of further stock decline in the next 3 years. They weren't happy with that for all the risks that we laid out and adopted against them at that. Led to a 29% chance of further stock decline in the next 3 years. It wasn't expressed in terms of yield, it was probability of further decline, but they clearly were looking for an alternative for 2025 that would lead them to a greater chance of stock recovery rather than the same. So they're effectively on a rebuilding right now. Voluntarily.
And I think it's, you could word a rebuilding plan. Again, maybe we actually, this is one of our objectives. Interpreted out of the Canadian policy, which was to avoid a decline.
When at a certain point.
Yeah, your risk tolerance for decline goes down. So when you're here, you got, so they've made a shift from 58% to 29. If this was a Canadian stock, you know, even less, depending on what, for groundfish, it would be really low, 5 to 10%.
Oh, really?
I would
what it's
imagine
supposed to
to start getting down to those levels you're talking.
Yeah, we went through that with sablefish. I mean, we got down to the point where quotas that had never been seen before, drastic reductions.
The thing I would say about 31 is that we don't have any evidence that this is a fishing related situation. So to call it overfished is going to confuse people.
I think that's why I kept the blue as well.
Yeah.
Choose, and we said up there preferably depleted.
People are going to read the parenthetical necessarily.
Yeah, that's why I would say, and, you know, we said above that, you know, thanks for the review of overfish and overfishing. It didn't really clarify much, but I think now that we've had this discussion, hopefully, what you really need is, at the moment, is a depleted
Yeah.
status. Overfished is not really super relevant right now. And if you did adopt depleted, you know, I would change a little bit of the language there to make sure it's in terms of the absolute biomass, because you're not, your relative one. It's really good.
That might be a really good way to go forward is when we use the term depleted, we're talking about an absolute biomass. Overfished, we're talking about that in.
Yeah.
But I really like that. That might be a really good way to delineate it.
easy to explain to somebody that the stock can be depleted, but not necessarily. Right. If we blend two, then it's much.
You guys don't really use the term depletion very much.
No, and
Which is
that's
good.
I was, yeah, I know, I
That's a
know your
relative
thoughts on
term.
depletion, yeah. But I think, you know, we might think about a different term, depleted. We can come up with something maybe a little bit better, but I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Depleted is the one that's out there.
Depleted is the one that's out there, yeah. Just still has a connotation that I don't like.
Definitely appreciate the clarifications here because this is kind of something the commission's gonna float.
Yeah.
The wording of these few paragraphs is gonna make a big difference for the conversations later in the year.
For sure. For the rest of Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks. Do you want to change 32?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. This is really helpful.
Let's just point out that this is not in New Zealand. You did have paragraph 29.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Okay.
Say that New Zealand uses.
Particular.
Yeah, the phrasing that New Zealand said in their harvest strategy was stocks can become depleted through a combination of overfishing and environmental factors.
I would just say fishing. It's not necessarily overfishing either.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Okay, we're on the 30, 33.
Sorry, on 33, do you want to just specify under the proposed definition of overfishing? Just to make it clear. And that'll link good with the next paragraph.
So it could be, instead of adopting a 3-year building requirement, you could make it more of an operational thing, like within 3 years, need to have demonstrated the rebuilding, like in practice, right? Got to implement whatever this change in probability is, or need that you could even shorten it. Right?
Yeah.
Reduce to 1 year. So that's really putting the rebuilding plan in place.
Yeah, I like that.
End of period.
And that the rebuilding plan is, yeah, expected to rebuild. I like that.
Everybody's
Thank you.
5. Route 637. Did you just add 38?
38's from previous report. Anything in blue is from the previous report. Just to see clarity, if you'd like it retained or modified, or in this case, highlighting that there was a contradiction.
I think we said that
All the commissioners just asking, like, just be a bit more clear. It was just informally, so if not, leave it or delete it.
So you can still delete it since it's not somehow related. Let's read it. Certainly still relevant. You can't
Yeah.
understand the effects of climate change if you're.
I think we'll have more specific things to say about climate change next June when that comes up. Eight.
So here's where the space time.
Thanks. I forgot. It's down. Sounds like
You already planned to do
That's
that.
what we're gonna do.
we could probably put requested to recommend it, so it's really a commissioner.
Yep.
The requested would not be elevated to the commission, but recommended would be elevated.
Well, that's you guys. Hold on.
Requesting is more informal to secretariat.
That always gets me.
That's what it always
sounds like.
Yes,
Hey,
Oh, really?
hey, guys.
Because I requested a stock assessment model be done by SRB026. And you said, oh, that's gonna be elevated to the commissioners. I'm like, well, they don't need to know that.
If you change it to record.
Man.
It's a recording.
Recording us.
In the end, we look at requested and recommended, so. it doesn't really matter.
So do you want to change some?
We're just leaving as they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, we have to change a lot. Okay. 39.
So I have a couple of things on it. So I think we also had a discussion about testing spatial generalization, trying to get how the model performs trained on one area but on another area. Would you like to add that to the report? It's not necessary. I'm planning to do that anyways, but would you like to add that?
Sure, I mean, I think partly in there with the covariance, but I guess it's not, that's a different issue, isn't it?
Yeah, because the covariance would mean that the model is trained with additional covariance. This means we're just taking images and see how it performs on different. There is say spatial generalization AI trained model, meaning how well the model trained in one area performs when predicting features in another. Train on autolets from one area performs features from autolets from another. From one area, in one area.
I think the justification for that was that reduced spatial representation of this, because the AI needs to be able to do that.
Yeah, and that would tie it pretty well to the 43C, that implication of potential future multispatial coverage of this achieving sampling goals. They're predict like a H43.
The conventionary, maybe that's not quite the right terminology.
I think it's okay. That's from the past. Then and in more just
Let's get 43. Now, what simulation testing means. We appreciate some clarification on that one.
I think the idea there was to ask what the effects stock assessment would be or to go to different AI-based aging approaches, whether completely AI, that one extreme, given the error rates that Masha was showing yesterday, hybrid approaches where AI is used up to a certain length. It's beyond that. So whatever you think are the likely scenarios for how AI could be used.
Doesn't have the AI information to set those up yet.
Yeah,
We would need some sort of final AI models out to be able to compare the precision and the potential for bias.
You mean you don't get to do this yet because the AI models are changing too rapidly still? They're still developing.
Yeah, I don't think you haven't proposed anything near a final, like,
Well-
this is what we would use moving forward.
well. The one approach, like we could, I think we could certainly test the results as of now. I'm just not sure whether it's sufficient. Whether the confidence intervals that are achieved, for example, if we try it now at 0.4 call whether these are reasonable confidence intervals for other years. So I think that would be the only, we could try it and see, but as I said, I think it probably would be more of a confidence interval than very year to year.
I guess it'd be useful to know what level of confidence is needed in the AI to achieve the performance you're looking for in the assessment. To be able to determine whether that bar is too high for what we're seeing from the AI.
Sounds like we probably have to simulate age compositions with some amount of error in the past. Because you wouldn't want to just throw in 2024 AI data. It's going to be swamped by all the past good, or annual red ages. So we'd want to say this is the type of error you'd expect from AI versus manual. Simulated age comps with that type of error. Then just, in 10, 20 years, this is the type of absurdities we would expect from the stock assessment.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's, I don't know if I would do going back. I think the practical thing is that going forward.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So yeah, so you would actually project going forward or alternate things. In any case, I think this should go in 44 because they're not going to get it done by September anyway. Yeah. So I think we could very simply just delete 43 and then in 44A, a description of how these approaches will be used, integrated, and tested within the assessment.
I feel like we really need to think about this because adding 1 or 3 years of AI data is different than the next 3 decades. We're going to rely on it. That performance is going to be quite different there.
And maybe we can change will to something like may because we know. So it will be more of that kind of exploratory work, how that will be potentially used in specific cases. Don't know yet. So especially as we work on the 5-year plan, we'll just explore the options, how we can approach the analysis of using AI and kind of provide the initial discussion on potential use of the epigenetic logs in the same way, like this is potential alternative, we can use it and just for now, just stick to potential scenarios versus we are not prescribing at this point.
I think
just
our,
yet.
our goal here is just to encourage continued integration of the AI-based aging assessment and MSC so that it's not moving in a direction. It's not going to be, I mean, if you're sort of asymptoting in your accuracy
Mhm.
and that level of accuracy is not sufficient for the assessment,
Mhm.
that would be a good stopping point.
Yeah, and I agree. That's what I was saying. If we continue to make improvement, there is a more that and look, maybe it's not sufficient just yet. We might not be getting further improvement as we try new things, and that might be kind of this is not there yet for incorporation, and just kind of providing a little bit more of a description on potential scenarios.
That's right.
That.
But knowing whether it's not there yet requires you to know what you're shooting for.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that answer can only come from exploration of the assessment and MSC.
And I think they're also like trying to see whether we can ship the method that's also minimizing the bias, especially at older ages.
So this was meant, we put the word strategic in there specifically because it's meant to apply to whole aging. So all manual included, manual, epigenetic, and plus conduct. So it's think about the whole picture. And one of the ways we tackle similar question in the last couple of years when asked if we could reduce the number of pages read and what the cost would be of that in terms of information content. A bunch of bootstrapping efforts using and determined how the effective sample size from the sampling program was affected by subsampling ages we collected and only reading certain sets. We did that based on
complete years where we had the full set. And we randomly subsampled and we looked for a relationship where we found for some areas we could reduce the number of red ages without having a big effect on the effective samples. But for other areas where we had sparse data or a protracted age composition, any reduction was going to cost us. So we used that to prioritize which areas we would subsample and how to save. We needed to save a couple thousand otolith breeds. And so we used that to prioritize where to put that reduction. Same similar thing can be done here. Using a year where we have data from all the sources, we can then compare the precision of the estimates from any of these different levels of age reading, different introduction of the AI, maybe different ways to process the AI. And that's actually a lot cleaner than trying to translate it all the way into the assessment. How you simulate the fishery data, there's bias, and there's a lot of other things that could roll into there. So as a first cut, I think we've got some data-based ways we can go. So we'll flesh that out and describe that in the research plan. But we'll see how.
That's what we.
Yeah, okay.
not trying to force
No,
it.
that's great.
That's what-
It's great. No, it's making a lot more sense.
And just a note, we continue to actually use for aging some sample of the main area. So currently we don't count it into age older market sample that we receive. So we actually do 50% of market sample from areas 2B, 2C, 3, and 3, 4, and 2A. We do 100%. So again, this is to the cost saving. Use the capacity that we have available. So that would be, yeah, we can try to do something similar to look at the reasonable approaches to incorporate mixed methods and see how it would be good for you, 5-year plan. And other than that, I just have, if you have any recommendations using AI accounting for uncertainty in manual age determination, if you have any recommendations on that or ideas, please go ahead, because that's where I would be really curious to hear.
You're the AI expert.
Yeah, we recommend you do that. And recommendation 43.
Just keep an, if you hear any, or if you see any interesting papers, let me know. 'Cause that's one thing I'm not sure how to tackle.
Okay, we do have some other business issues. Scheduling conflicts in September.
Or XX right now.
Just below, you can see those two from Nola.
Yeah, we'll be able to do it. 23rd September, previously.
The work meeting is the first week of September, so ideally not close to that.
What about the week of the 15th, like?
To anybody else's placement as well.
There's a plan team meeting there, but we had
Another option is to get an alternate. I don't have a conflict with the 15 and 19.
I forgot we goes to work. It makes the third week easier than
Pete Halson would probably not be able to attend the SRB much that week of 15th and 19th.
He's the attended the first day, this meeting. But 3 SRB members make that 15th to 19th that week.
In theory, I could, but it would be the third week in a row that I would be way.
That's my strategy.
But I'm gonna hire somebody to stay at my house and take care of my dog.
Oh, I know.
Bring the dog.
My dog's not.
I drop it off at my house.
That should be fun.
So it would be the 16th, 17th, 18th, being in the middle of the week. Is that preferable? I know for you traveling in particular, it's fine. It's better if it's 16th in the middle, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
It's a
Okay. Okay, we can lock that in. Then just in terms of the agenda itself, is it functioning well enough for you? We didn't formally introduce that discussion session on the end of the second day into the agenda, but we agreed to at the previous meeting. So you're happy with that? It's kind of a nice way informally to have discussions with staff on topics offline. So we can just incorporate that for the afternoon.
Yeah, that was good. So some good wide ranging discussion there.
Then the next question is the following meeting in June. I think we've agreed to move it to the last week in May, given the whole soccer World Cup. Tripling of hotel prices in May and June. So I don't have those dates. Can either of you remember, or any of you remember rather, discussion with Paula? Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to travel anywhere domestically in June next year. World Cup's going on. It's gonna be very expensive.
The hotel you're staying at the moment, starting price is $1,000. Just to give you an example, the price gouging that's going on. So what would potentially work for everybody, the 19th, 20th, 21st?
That would be my preference.
Yep, that works. My wife's gonna be really pissed if it's next week because it's our anniversaries.
That's right. Always get this message. And we can just put it in there tentatively at the moment, because we want to make sure the hotel is not to shuffle things again. Assuming earlier than that is not. The other option is just to go online for that meeting as well. Becomes a time difference issue.
It's not enough of a time difference to matter.
It's 10 hours for me, but
Mhm.
if we could start here like 8 o'clock local time, it would mean meeting would run until 2 o'clock at night. And I think I could do that.
Ouch.
It'll just be getting dark about that time, right?
Actually, sun will start to rise.
Put it down as tentative and we'll do some checking.
Thanks for adjusting the September dates. Sorry for correction, things. Get one by the week after and it's too much coordinating.
No, we don't have an excuse not to go,
We'll go to it.
not to go to Ohio. Wedding.
Good. Anything else?
There, but like additional time to discuss Is that what you're talking about? So that's the thing that's gonna come in the summer?
Yes.
Okay, move to adopt the report. All in favor?
Thank you.
Liz, send it out.
Thanks, everybody online.